already hit it.
No, he had the Otter AI on. Now it's recording.
Oh.
Welcome, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Herschel Greenberg. I have been teaching here at Mount SAC since 2007. However, my online experience extends far beyond Mount SAC. I've been teaching online classes at Chaffey College for about 7 years now, and those classes have been fully asynchronous. And since the pandemic at Mount SAC, I've been teaching my classes synchronously. And so during that time, I've had a great deal of experience experimenting with the differences between the two and looking at the data and looking at the results of how a student learns in an asynchronous environment versus a synchronous environment. And early in the spring of 2020, when we switched to online synchronous, I immediately saw a difference. And I started to really study why and what was happening that made the difference between the two modes of teaching. And after that semester ended, I really felt like that we were onto something. This is potentially the future of teaching. And so what I'm trying to do is sort of spread the idea that synchronous teaching can be effective, if not more so than face-to-face teaching. And so I have ideas I want to share with you and kind of answer questions about this mode that has been very successful for me and that I want to encourage people to consider teaching. But before we do that, I want some input from all of you. So those of you who are here right now, how many of you have taught a asynchronous class?
Does hybrid count, like asynchronous, synchronous?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then how many of you have taught synchronous classes?
Is that hybrid count this time?
Yeah, it depends upon if the synchronous part is part of the hybrid. So let's rewind very quickly so I can rephrase my question. Mount SAC has very specific definitions of words that not all schools have. So prior to the pandemic, hybrid was defined as a class that would typically meet in person, face-to-face, typically about 8 weeks. And then they would have an online component that was typically asynchronous. And that would be part of that hybrid. Now, some of that might have been synchronously, but it wasn't necessarily designed to be that way. The synchronous was in person on campus. The asynchronous was in Canvas outside the classroom. Synchronous, by definition at Mount SAC, is a class that meets at a set time online completely. So for example, my class is Wednesdays from 12 to 2. So I'm literally at my computer with my students from 12 to 2 every Monday, Wednesday. Identical to what I'd be doing in a classroom, but we happen to be using technology like cameras and microphones and Canvas. An asynchronous class, which is what at Mount SAC they call distance learning, is a class that's fully online that doesn't have any synchronous components. For a class to be considered to be fully online, it has to be approved by distance learning. So the class has to go through a process. And the instructor, again, prior to the pandemic, had to be spot certified to teach that very unique kind of online class. And if any of you have gone through spot certification, you can see that the remains of that terminology is still in the training. They are very much focused on asynchronous teaching. A lot of their program is not about doing the synchronous teaching, which is why I think what I'm offering is going to be hopefully unique and helpful in terms of seeing it from a different point of view.
I agree. And
Good.
I'm really looking forward to what you have to say, because this semester is the first time I've started teaching it's synchronous on Thursdays for 2 hours, but then it's partially asynchronous, I guess, because I only have that mandated 2-hour spot per week.
Got it. So
in one class. So that's why I'm like, it's sort of half and half, you know.
We're going to laugh. Mount SAC has not named that yet. However, almost every other college calls it remote blended.
Okay, so I'm doing remote blended. Thank you for letting me know.
But if you say that here, nobody will have any clue what that means. Right now, they're calling that hybrid, but that violates the rule of hybrid before the pandemic. So we can't use the word hybrid because it's not technically what it is. It's a remote blended where, let's say you teach 4 hours a week and 2 hours is synchronous and 2 hours is asynchronous. So you're still remote, but you're blending the two different types.
Right.
That's right. And I haven't done
Thank
that yet.
you.
I have done fully synchronous. I will be doing the remote blended this summer. Yeah.
You know, though, I think what you have to tell me will be extremely helpful because I'm having some problems with my synchronous meetings.
Okay, great.
You know,
So,
like,
gotcha.
how do you get them to show their faces? Do you have to give them points to show their faces? Do you have to make it required? What if you tell people it's required, but then they never show up? Like, I have
Okay.
one student who has been to like one synchronous meeting. I don't think he's going to pass anyways because he's not turning other things in, but it's like,
Okay, I got you covered.
ah!
But before we get there, what I want to do is have each of you, and John, you've already done this once, you don't have to do it again, is to just, look, if you're at home, you could probably just type into a Word document. If you want to write it down in a pad of paper, that's fine. But I would like you to do right now is write down 3 things that you are noticing as an issue or a struggle for you or a struggle for your students regarding the asynchronous component of your teaching. So in a remote blended, the asynchronous part, what are you encountering? What is the issue you're having with your teaching or your students? And right now it's for you, just type it out because that way you can add notes to it. And if it was me, I would just type it in Microsoft Word. And Laura, this is being recorded. So although I won't be able to answer your questions directly, hopefully what you're thinking will be asked by other people and I will do my best to answer it. And you can always email me directly and ask me.
Can we put it in chat too?
Not yet. Just right now,
Okay.
it's just you taking notes for yourself, kind of like a pre-writing.
Okay.
Kind of like a warm up. All right, take another minute to finish up your thoughts. One thing we're about to do is we'll kind of demonstrate even my own teaching style is that I have no clue what you're going to ask me. So I have nothing prepared in a specific order. Though I've got a few notes in front of me from the last time I did this, I don't have to follow those notes. I will go in whatever direction we go in. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we come up with. All right, does everybody have at least 2 or 3 questions written down? Or I should say
Oh, yeah.
issues they encounter? Okay.
At least.
So I'm going to start with the first one Joy said, which is the issue of cameras. So by law, we are not allowed to require students to be on camera. That's not a Mount Sac law. It's pretty much a state law. So immediately my first reaction is, Joy, you can ask them to be on camera, but you cannot make them be on camera. So the way in which I fix that problem in a synchronous class is that I ask them to make sure they contribute by talking on their microphone and or in the Zoom chat as needed. Now, I feel pretty good that I get a majority of my students who are on their camera. And I feel good that I also get a lot of students who tell me when they can't. One student told me yesterday, hey, I've got people walking in the background, so my camera's off. Well, that automatically tells me that you're present, that you're there, and you've alerted me like a courtesy of like, hey, I'm going to be absent. This is the same kind of respect that they would show by just simply saying, hey, this is what's happening. And I'm like, that's great. Thanks for letting me know. And sometimes they tell me in the chat, sometimes they tell me via email. You want to encourage them to have their cameras on, but you can't force it. The one thing I have started to say, though, is that when they're in breakout rooms, I really want them to have their cameras on to talk to each other. And what I have found actually is while they're in breakout rooms, I kind of like would walk around a classroom. I will jump from room to room to observe what they're talking about and see how the conversation's going. And I have found that a lot of them do turn their cameras on to talk to each other, but may not have their camera on for me. And I'm okay with that. I just want them to be stimulated to talk to each other the same way they would in a face-to-face classroom. So that's my take on that. I find in general, more of them have their camera on than do not.
I just started doing that recently, not at the beginning of my class, but I started doing the breakout rooms and then jumping from breakout room to breakout room. And I found that is really helpful. I wish I would have started it earlier in the semester.
Sure. And
Also,
and
you could
go ahead.
Also, you could tell if people aren't there, they never join their breakout room.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can see them
It's like,
sitting in, yeah.
yeah, they're supposedly there. They're muted and their
Yep.
camera's off. But then when you do breakout rooms, they never join their breakout room. And it's like
Right.
they just turned it on and went somewhere else.
Okay, so I have a category for participation. And I tell them that kind of thing is a participation category. Now, granted, people go to the bathroom, they get water, they stretch. So I give them like, a good couple of minutes to do the switch from a room to the breakout room. And I try to say, hey, Johnny, are you there? Hello, Sally, are you there? Please respond. I sent you a breakout room. And a lot of times they'll come back and say, sorry, I stepped away for a minute, and they jump in. So it's about being flexible. But the one thing that might help is that if any of you are teaching 1A and you have a TC, make sure you give your TC co-host ability so that they can also jump from room to room and can even make a breakout room if a student wants to talk to them separately. So I'm working with my TC and I immediately say, hey, Tanner, I'm going to give you co-host abilities. Please make sure you jump from room to room. And if a student wants to talk to you, for example, separately, you can make the additional breakout room just for the two of you. So that's a really good technique for making students feel that they can talk to somebody, and the co-host can do that.
I'm glad you brought that up because tonight I'm going to have a class and this is the first night I'm going to try to make my classroom tutor be a co-host.
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like trying to figure out how does this work? So you just designate him as a co-host, right?
That's it.
And then he can just go in and out of breakout rooms and make a breakout room for a
Yep.
student to talk to him if they want to or something.
Correct. You roll over their icon that basically is their box for their video, and there's three blue dots, or I'm sorry, it's white dots on a blue thing, and you can click on it and make co-host. It's one of the options in the list. You and I can't do it, Joy, because we're not the host. Only John can do it right now. But on
Okay,
your Zoom, when you schedule it, you can make the co-host.
So John could make another co-host. He's made you co-host or something? Or he could technically.
He has not made me co-host currently, but he could. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, great. So this is a good start. All right. So let's go either to Bianca, John, or Cynthia. Talk to me. What did you write down as an issue that you see in your asynchronous teaching? My goal is to switch it to a positive for synchronous teaching.
I'll go if no one else wants to jump in. As I mentioned, mostly I've been doing the async sync, right? So it's like a little bit of both. And I found that when I give them any work that is more so leaning towards the asynchronous portion, I found that students generally, maybe because of issues of self-motivation or what have you, they really have trouble respecting deadlines, as opposed to when I'm giving them work in the more leaning towards the synchronous portion, when I'm the one keeping them accountable, right? So it's about me keeping them accountable versus their own accountability. But I try to be as lenient and understanding as possible because everyone's going through the same issue as anyone else with the chaos of the pandemic, and I don't know what's going on in their lives and so on and so forth. But it's just sometimes a little bit frustrating. I don't let it seep out too much in the classroom at all, but it is something I've noticed as a general pattern, is how to even motivate them when I'm not there to motivate them.
Got it. So that's a really good question, and a good issue that is very common in the asynchronous classes. So for my 7 years of teaching at Chaffey College, I am very confident when I say that the number one reason students don't pass an assignment because they open up the Canvas page for the first time at 9 p.m. and the assignment is due at 10 p.m. and they cannot write a 7-paragraph essay in 1 hour. And those are the students who do not get very good scores because they just don't give themselves time. Time management is the gremlin of online asynchronous learning. It is 100%. Every study has shown it's the motivation to stay on task and to complete an assignment on their own. So here's the great news in a synchronous class, and you've already actually said it, is that completely goes away. Because if I teach at 12 o'clock face-to-face, the essay is due at 12 o'clock. And if I teach online at 12 o'clock, guess when the essay is still due? 12 o'clock, right? The due date doesn't change. And the time between meeting your students in a synchronous environment is identical to a face-to-face environment. So if I meet them Monday, Wednesday, and the essay is due Monday, that's the exact same amount of time as if they meet me online. However, in an asynchronous environment, you might say, well, the essay is due on Sunday night, but they might not know to work on that until Sunday night, and therein lies the problem. So right away, the advantage of synchronous teaching is that goes away completely. You do not have to worry about that anymore. Now, granted, real life happens. I'm not going to lie that students ask for extensions on that all the time. But that's the world we live in. But in terms of the motivation, because they see you during that synchronous time, that's how that problem is fixed. Now, in terms of the asynchronous portion for those that are going to teach the remote blended, the tools that are the most effective are the announcements tool. That is key. Because when you send an announcement, if any of you don't know, the student actually gets an alert in their Canvas page, whether it be an app or in their email. So that is one way to get their attention. Number two is going to be on email. So when you email them through the Canvas inbox, they get an alert. But the third one would be is this. I actually recommend all of you show them how to use the calendar tool in Canvas and let them put, well, hold on, rewind. When you make an assignment, it is automatically in the calendar. But that calendar, if I recall, can be exported and told to be an alert for students so they get the reminders as well, right in Canvas. The last part that is the most difficult, and I'm not going to say I have a solution, is how do you get students to log into Canvas more often? That's the trick. They have to log in more often because then they will see the alerts, they will see the calendar, they'll see the announcement. So I tell students when I'm teaching asynchronously, they should be logging in 3 times a day because I am. And I'm sending emails and I'm sending announcements and I'm grading papers and giving feedback. With the synchronous portion though, I tell them that the class is as normal, but when I open up a week for them to look at, they can see everything due on a Monday and the Wednesday, so they can get the head start on that material. Yes, absolutely. Great idea, John. Always pair it with that announcement. If you open something up, if you make a change, if something's due on a Monday or a Wednesday, send the announcement as a reminder. And you can, all of you, I don't know if you know this, you can program announcements to be sent at intervals so that you could create one announcement and tell the computer to send it out at a specific time. So that way you don't have to keep programming them.
Can you send it out? Can you do it on like, let's say I have one announcement and it's an announcement that says something like, you know, in 2 weeks, your essay is due, like hypothetically. Can I have it that it sends that same announcement out repeatedly until a certain threshold? Do you know if that's a capability?
I'm looking right now. We have 3 options: delay posting, enable podcast, and allow liking. So the only thing that I think it can do is delay the posting until a certain moment. But I think what you can do is once it's posted, you can re-edit and then click delay posting again and change the date. So it does require a little bit of you